it will be repeat what others have said. I will leave you with Professor Tijani Muhammad Naniya to come and present his lecture. What I'm sure is that Prof is going to do justice to the topic of this lecture. I wish you happy listening.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. أما بعد, the Vice Chancellor, Bayer University, Kano, represented by one of our political scientists, not only in Kano, but northern Nigeria generally. The chairman of the occasion, my senior colleague, the double professor, Professor Abdullah Adamu, the chairman of the organizing committee, my senior colleague also, Professor M.D. Suleiman, professors here present. Sorry, sir, my head of department. Members of the organizing committee, my grand teacher, Professor Marilast, who is with us. Ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. First of all, let me say that I happen to find myself in dilemma, because for a son to present a lecture and his father to be one of the discussants, that is really too terrible and dangerous. I wanted Professor Abdullah to be the discussant, second discussant, but he wanted to be our father. One of my principal informants when I was doing my first degree research and also my PhD. And one of the benefactors that I benefited a lot from reading some of his works, especially in history. So I still plead that let Abdullah be Abdullah. Let Muhammad Uba rest in peace. Thank you. For the other discussant, the radical historian, Professor, and also a senior colleague, I say that, I welcome the discussion that we are going to have on this topic of interest. The topic is Emirs and politics in northern Nigeria. Interrogating Emirate crisis in Kano. Emirate crisis in Kano. But I have reframed my lecture to be dissecting crisis in the Emirate of Kano. Genesis, dimension, and implication. From earliest period to 2014. I've decided to stop at 2014 for two reasons. One is in the ethics of history, historical ethics, we don't discuss personalities while it is the hem of affairs. Because here we are not inviting critical discourse. but rather trying to take sides, whether we have reasons, genuine or otherwise. But I think dissecting the entire crisis in the history of Kano briefly and stopping at 2014 will give each and every one of us the weapons to analyze the current situation. And if somebody were to look into all this, then he will make an informed decision and informed conclusion. Because without going into the history of the developments in the history, in the emergence of monarchy in Kano, then you cannot appreciate the current problems we are facing. And just looking at the current problem, you will do yourself injustice in trying to reach a conclusion. Because nothing happens in vacuum. Everything you touch has its root, its history. And you cannot just climb up on the top of the tree without starting from the bottom. Only when you do that, you may successfully climb, otherwise will fall. It will be catastrophic. Two, touching the issue now will be contemptuous to court, because there is now series of court cases concerning the current crisis we're having in the Kano Emirate. So I don't think it will be fair for me to dwell into issues that are currently in court. Therefore, as I said, I will confine myself to 2014, and all the discussions that I will generate, I hope they may not want to push me into what happened between 2014 and today. Having said that, I want to start by saying the reason why we talk or we see this issue as an issue that is crucial and important is because the monarchy, the Sarauta institution in Kano, is what makes Kano what it was, what it has become, and what is currently experienced. It established Kano into an organized kingdom with defined boundaries, with ethics and culture. In essence, the monarchy or the Sarauta gives Kano the form, the character, the unique cultural identity as exemplified by Kananchi being its distinguishing feature between other Hausa kingdoms and Emirates. So we are here as Kanawa or as people residing in Kano because of the effort of the monarchy in establishing the territory and in providing leadership and all other efforts at developing it that makes Kano now what it is, and we are beneficiaries of that. To allow this institution just to die, not a natural death, but a forceful death, I think we are doing injustice, not only to Kano, not only to the institution, but to our very selves. So that is why we need to know, why is this institution facing the kind of problems it is facing now? Is it new? Is this the first time? Or is it part of the history of Kano? Which I believe it is. It is the history of Kano. Right from the formation of Kano, the institution of monarchy in Kano has been facing one problem or the other. So for some of us that are students of history, when we see what is happening now, or what happened up to 2014, we are not surprised. And we think it will fizzle away. One day it will be history. The only difference is, while in the past, the monarchy, the Kano society, has instruments of sanitizing the situation, there is an effort now to lay down those mechanisms and to try to either regionalize, nationalize, or even internationalize the problem with a view of getting solution outside the society of Kano. And this will not work well for Kano. It will not even work. It will not even work because it's outside the tradition of the Kanawa. Having said all this, now let me come to the main theme of the lecture. Kano emerged as a kingdom due to four important factors. The first factor is that of the monarchy, as I said, which gave Kano the form. Kano was a conglomeration of hamlets, autonomous hamlets, but rather later there was an effort by the Bagaudawa to bring it together into an organized political unit, giving it all the paraphernalia that made it a real state, a real power, an economic base, a cultural setting, an identity that made it to compete among other states within her neighbors and regional states within the Central Sudan. For that reason, once you talk about Kano, or you are giving credit to the rise and flourishing of Kano, you are in a way glorifying the efforts of the monarchy in Kano, for making Kano, for providing the security, and all other things that made Kano what it is. This is a fundamental factor, and that's why this is what we are enjoying. The second factor that made Kano was the factor of Islam. I could remember, I just read part of the translation made by into Ajami, sponsored by Abdullah, which is an excellent job. And he was trying to say that there were three prominent rulers in Kano that gave Kano its form and fame, and that could not be competed against. He credited that to Samiya, the one that destroyed the traditional religion in Kano, Yaji, that accepted Islam not only as a religion, but a state religion and ideology, and an ideology to Kano, and Muhammad Rufa, that consolidated those activities and built upon it, making Kano not only a regional power, but a continental power, with tentacles extending even to Europe in terms of economic relations. This issue of Islam is very crucial in understanding all the developments that later followed. The third factor is the factor of the aristocracy. The monarchy, in its effort to succeed, needed able-bodied officials, both titled and untitled, both free and slave origin. These became the force that supported the monarchy in the struggle to make Kano great, to make Kano exemplary, to make Kano excel. Then the last, or I can say the fourth, was the issue of the scholars and traders, scholar traders. Because the earlier people that came and established Kano as a foremost rendezvous of economic activities were people of Timbuktuan, that is Malian, the Tuaregs, North African and Bornuan, and of Bornuan, of Nupe and Yoruba origin. These were those traders and ulama that made Kano to become a very, very important place for trade. Then the last but not the least is the remnants of the traditional belief that Sanya Obasin. Many people assumed that with Yaji or with Sanya and Yaji, that was the end of the traditional belief system. Pockets of them remained, and they were influential. And as time went by, they re-emerged to try either to take over or to influence some of the developments in the Emirate structure in terms of generating crisis, abating it, or benefiting from it. Having said so, what is crisis? Crisis talks of is referring to a difficult situation. The effort to resolve it will either materialize in the positive or in the negative. Each of both ways will have a serious repercussion. So, among these 5 factors, there is struggle between the aristocrats, the ulama, the scholars, and the traditional custodians of the Tsambulbura, Sibiri, Dirki, or what have you cults. All struggling to control the monarchy. Whoever succeeded in having a tremendous influence on the monarchy then will drive policies in favor of his own group. The effort by others to fight it or combination of others will lead to crisis. This is what transferred from the period of Yaji up to 2014 in the history of the Sarauta institution in Kano. This crisis we are talking about, there are crises that sometimes involve a stalemate. It led to a stalemate in the Sarauta institution. Sometimes it led to deposition, and at worst, it led to civil war. There are so many of these in the history of Kano. At any given time, what made Kano to survive all these is sometimes our ability to have this mechanism of resolving the crisis, but more importantly, the effectiveness of Kano Sarauta institution at any given time raised on the ability, capability, and resolution of the Sarki, the incumbent Sarki. It's the nature of the Sarkis that determined whether there will be crisis in Kano or there will be no crisis. Let me now cite some examples to illustrate what we have said so far. And in doing this, I want to see the history of Kano. I want to break it into, say, 4 or 5 phases. The initial phases is based on what Sheikh Adamu Namaji did, who demarcated the phases to be from Bagauda era, which took some 462 or 63 years, to the Rumpa era, which took some 163 years, to the Kutumbawa era, which took some 167 years, to the Jihad era, which took some 100 and about 20-something years now. In all these, there were crises in the Emirates. In the kingdom, then later in the Emirates. How these were resolved, or how you analyze them, depends upon the peculiarity of the time, the context of the situation. The catalyst in this was the crisis generated by Kanajeji, Sarki Kanajeji. Sarki Kanajeji was the ruler of Kano between 1390 and 1410. He was the one that attempted to change the successes achieved by his father, Sarki Yaji. Sarki Yaji established Islam, and he used Islam to establish control over neighboring areas, especially the formidable opponent of Kano, formidable rival of Kano, Santolo. The defeat on Santolo opened the gate for Kano to expand southwards, to establish trade relations with places like Zaria, Zazzau, up to Nuteland. Then southeastwards, up to Borno. Yaji used his strategy as jihad in order to expand, and that's why he got the support of the ulama, the Mandinka ulama. Kanajeji wanted to continue with this. Unfortunately, he failed when he came to conquer Zazzau. He failed to take over Turunku, and that devastated him. And it was then, and this was the beginning of the crisis, then he was trying to pick fault. And he was told by the custodians of the police in Burbura that, you see, the mistake of your grandfather, Naniya. That's why you became ashamed now. If you actually bad, then you succeed. This made Kanajeji to dismiss the Mandinka and to recall the Sagiri custodians. And they worked and they defeated Zaria. This now broke the Sarauta, the aristocracy. There was crisis between pro-Islam, that is the ulama, and pro-traditional religion. This started the program. At any given time, you find a crisis in Kano, you find it. I said, now we don't talk of traditional custodian of Sambulubala, but you talk of other influences. You find that it is those officials within the palace that normally work with one another in order to undo the others and to control the monarchy. This action of Kanajeji made his successors, especially Sarki Umar and later Sarki Dauda, to acquiesce in their attempt to accept the Wangarawa ulama and work with them 100%. most of them either lean towards one or lean towards the other. That means they either lean towards the ulama or towards the traditional belief system. Working towards the ulama, then the ruler had to work in a way agreeable with the Sharia. If it was traditional religion, nobody cared. That's why you find Umaru becoming almost non-entity. And Sarki Dauda becoming very fierce to the extent that he felt even to control power was immaterial, so he resigned in 1421. Only the coming of Sarki Abdullahi Bulja, because of his charisma, he tried to build a balance. He tried to build a balance, not belonging to any. Why being pro-Islam and pro-Muslim scholars, but he did not discard, not as a relevance, but he did not do away with the influence which the traditional religious holders were having, even though he did not patronize them. It is now that the third element set in, that is a military force. During Sarki Abdullahi Bulja, there was the emergence of Galadima Dauda, who was a warrior and who was able to bring a lot to extend the power of the source of Kano even to the Jukun territory. Areas like Panda, Walji, and the Umbutu areas were all conquered and brought within the confines of Kano. With Abdullah Bulja and Galadima Dauda, there was an understanding, a formidable force that nobody could play with Kano. Unfortunately, the death of Bulja showed that it was his charisma and that of Dauda that held Galadima Dauda that held Kano into a stable position. No sooner were the rulers that followed him happened to be weak, like the Kauta and the Atuma, because of which ruled only in 1452, almost not up to a month. Their weaknesses came into the open, and there was a crisis. Galadima Dauda did not give them any form of respect, so he organized for their removal because he controls the force. That was the Bagauda era. What happened during the Rumpa era? During the era of Muhammad Rumpa, which was between 1463 to 1623. That was when Rumpa and all his descendants were the rulers. There was consolidation of the gains made by Abdullah Bulja, Sarki Yakubu, and what have you. So Kano was flourishing, became great to the extent that it started to attract attention from other regional powers like Katsina, like Kefi, not Kefi, Kebi, and principally Borno. That was when regional politics intruded into Kano, Emirate affairs. This rivalry made some of these powers to have stooges within the Emirate Council. Whether they were paid, or they had stooges that worked for them in order to dwindle the progress of Kano. Saleh or tributes was started being paid by Kano to Borno during the coming of Dagachi in 1422. And this continued up to the period of Rumpat. Tribute was being paid, meaning that Kano has accepted the influence of Borno over her. even if becoming submissive, but it had accepted that. But these giants of Rumpa now made the Kanawa to feel that they have come of age. They could do away with that. It was then that the Dagachi that came was realized to be perhaps a spy that came to stay and represent the interests of Borno in Kano. Because no sooner did the successor of Rumpa refuse to pay that tribute, then the descendant of that Dagachi reported him to Borno, and the following 1 year, there was the presence of the Borno force, and they halted at Gunduawa, ready to enter Kano and fight it. It was then that the successor of Sarki Muhammad Rumfa Abdullahi, 1499 to 1509, now went and begged the Mai of Borno that no, we will pay. We will pay. So the contingent of Borno withdrew. What I'm trying to do, I'm trying to be brief. I will not take you long, please. This now created another problem. It was in a way regionalizing or even internationalizing the conflict or the Emirate crisis. Borno withdrew. But that's when Kebi wanted to make an effort to conquer Kano under Kotal Kanta between 1506 to 1550. Then another powerful Kano ruler, that was Muhammad Kisoki, became the leader. Kisoki must have heard about development in the Muslim world, and he wanted to behave in a similar way to prove his leadership. The Muslim world then was under the Ottoman Empire. The 16th century was the golden period of the Ottoman Empire, especially under Suleiman the Magnificent, 1522 to 1566. That was when Kisoki was also the leader here in Kano. Kisoki must have heard about what was happening there, because the contact between Kano and those areas were just commonplace. Remember, that was the time when Leo Africanus was in Kano. And his report went all over, went viral in North Africa and to Europe about the state of Kano, and vice versa. So Kisoki, once he realized that Suleiman the Magnificent once even challenged the Pope at Vienna, that he wanted a duel between the Pope and himself, and he wanted fate to decide who was to live and who was to die. This kind of bravery made Kisoki to stand to the challenge of the Sultan of the Mai of Borno and to refuse to pay the tribute. And he stopped the threat of Kebi. But what happened? Kisoki died a year earlier than the days of Suleiman the Magnificent. Kisoki died in 1565, after 56 years in office. That's made him the longest emir that ruled Kano, only followed by Adovai, who spent 51 years. So what happened? It's the days of Kisoki. Those that were to replace him as emirs happened to be very weak, just like Suleiman the Magnificent. The 10 rulers that followed Suleiman's victory were weak, and that opened Europe, the weakness of Ottoman Empire to Europe. This weakness of the rulers that succeeded Kisoki opened the weaknesses of Kano to her rivals, especially Katsina. And this was what led to to the crisis in the palace. They wanted, the monarchy wanted to have somebody that will be of similar charisma with Abdullahi Majekal. She couldn't get one. So his son, Yakubu, could not match his aura. He was deposed. He was deposed by one powerful person, not a member of the legislature, because he was not a title holder. He was only banging on his relationship with the mother of Muhammad Kisoki, that is Maidaki Hawa, who was very powerful. And she was the one that prevailed on Kisoki to be given all the kind of things that Guli, that was the name of the person, needed. Unfortunately, Hawa died during the reign of Kisoki and he was put at bay. Guli was put at bay. So when Kisoki died, now Guli re-emerged. And he sided with some of the title officials to depose the son of Kisoki, that was Yakufu. And this raised the coalition or another section within the aristocracy under Madaki Salkatuniya. And there was a civil war. A civil war that defeated Guli and reinstated Yakubu. But Yakubu could not match the politics of that time, so he accepted to resign. Between 1565 up to 1582, there were 3 successive rulers that were so weak they could not match the intrigues in the palace. There was Dauda Abasama, the son of Yakubu. There was Abubakar Kado. And there is Muhammad Shesheri. All of them could not match. And that was when Katsina realized the weakness and she intruded. She came in. And she started bringing devastating defeats, one after the other, to Kano, to the extent that at one time, during the reign of Shesheri, just getting around 1582, Shesheri wanted to attack Katsina. It was at Kankia. Not only was Kano forces defeated, but that created one thing of the regional dimension of the crisis in the Emirate. In Katsina, there was an attempt after the end of the war, after the defeat, there was an attempt on the life of Shesheri by no other than his bodyguards. One of the commander, his commander that knew the bodyguards and wanted to identify them was killed. That was Santuraki Nari, in order to cover the trace. And what happened? The question now is, was Katsina the one that organized this? Was Katsina the one that organized this? Or was it an intrigue from within the palace? Take note of that. Now, which means the reason for crisis in Kano, right from that time, started to unveil itself. There was the influence of Bono. There was the influence of Katsina. Perhaps in order to downplay the emergence of Kano as a dominant economic power. Military power, they can contest, but economic power, it is a bounty provided by the location of Kano. Well, Katsina and Kano are in a similar location, but Kano was on a more suitable location, which unveiled itself in the 19th century. Okay, this now, it was a new experience of the crisis in Kano, in the Rumpa period. What happened? During the time of Muhammad Nazaki, the threat of Katsina against Kano started to increase, and defeat upon defeat was coming to Kano, to the extent that Muhammad Nazaki started to remember what Kanadeji did. He also recreated the institution of Sibiri, the traditional Hausa cult in Kano. He thought that relying on it will bring Kano to succeed over Katsina. This did not provide the answer. Then he instituted some ulama. He sent them to have a dialogue and a settlement with Katsina. Katsina refused. This continued. In fact, up to the end of the Rumpa era, it was the order that obtained. But what happened is at the beginning of the 17th century, that was when the Kuntumbawa set in. The Kuntumbawa allied themselves with the ulama class in order against the others, especially the military and the traditional cult leaders. This made Muhammad Kutumbi to succeed to some extent in his long reign between 1623 to 1648. He succeeded, but that was the beginning of another stage into the Emirate, and which also became a problem to generating crisis in the Emirate Council. That was the Jukun factor in the history of Kano. The Jukun also caused a lot of instability. In fact, one of the things that led to the Second Civil War in 1623, after the deposition of King Kokuna, was what was the policy to be adopted against the Jukuns. That was the time when the second wave of Wangara immigrants came to Kano, which Asil al-Wangari referred to in the middle of the 17th century. The Wangarawa wanted to continue with dialogue instead of war. But another section of the councillors and the military wanted war. Those that wanted war deposed Kokuna. Madawaki Kama deposed Kokuna, Sarki Kokuna, and imposed Sarki Soyaki in order to continue to confront the Jukuns. This generated into a civil war. The civil war that was fought at Hotoro and led to the success of the pro-Kokuna group. That success no avail because within 6 years, even those that succeeded realized that Kokuna was irrelevant, so they deposed him, leading to another appointment. What I am trying to say, even during this Kutumbi period, there was this crisis faced by the Emirate regarding the retention or the deposition of a Sarki. And this at any given time depended upon the charisma of that Sarki and the interest group at that time that had that became the dominant force. This was also what happened that even gave the Fulani the chance to defeat Al-Wali. The appointment of Al-Wali was contested by many of his brothers. One of them that could not succeed, his immediate brother that could not succeed, even rebelled and went away with his followers into the central Nigeria, just around Jos area, where he established a new kingdom of Canaan, which today he has the state of Canaan. Kana, there were the descendants of the Kutumbawa that refused to accept the appointment of Sarki Al-Wali II and moved and established another emirate or another kingdom at that time at Kana. The other one was S. Galadima, Mama. He accepted that he accepted even to be removed as Chiroma, Chief Chiroma and Mama, which means he will not become the heir apparent to Al-Wali. When the opportunity opened itself, he joined forces. While he was with Al-Wali, then he joined forces with the jihadists. In secret, he was aiding the jihadists. In fact, at the Battle of Anyaya, he brought his forces in support of Al-Wali just into the war. And Al-Wali was making an impact when he withdrew his forces and changed loyalty, supported the jihadists. One of the reasons that led to the fall of Al-Wali. So this was an insider, the government of the Kanawa, of the Hausa in Kano, was overthrown as a result of this. The infiltration. What we are saying is at any given time you see crisis in the emirate in Kano. The crisis, in most cases, during the pre-colonial period, was internally generated. By the 16th century, it became regional and perhaps international. We don't know whether at that time these ulama that had contact with Ottoman were working towards influencing Ottoman authority. Nobody could say. But we know it was at that time that Suleiman of Magandishan was trying to conquer the North African territories, especially between 1525 to 1550. So what happened during the Jihad era? During the Jihad era, also there was crisis in the emirate. And the crisis was not from anywhere, it was from within the jihadists. It was a kind of clan contact, clan relations that ran Kano after the conquest between the Jobawa, the Sulubawa, the Danejawa, the Yolawa, the Dambazawa. These were those that conducted the jihad in different quarters. Once they succeeded, then they brought Kano together. Some conquered the west, like the Yolawa, the Dambazawa, northern part of Kano, the Jobawa, southern part of Kano, and the Sulubawa, the western part of Kano. But then they brought Kano together. But who would be the leader? The question of leadership was about to divide Kano kingdom apart. In fact, had since continued, there would have been 4 or 5 Kanos, because the Joba would take their own, the Suluba would take their own, the Yola would take their own, the Dambazawa, if not for the foresight of the leaders of the jihad in Sokoto, who now resolved to appoint somebody, non-participant practically in the jihad. That was Suleiman. And that made others to acquiesce, to accept. Perhaps based on the prayer which was alleged to have been made by Al-Wali when he was leaving the palace, he looked back behind his shoulder and saw the palace. He said, these people, the Jobawa, were those that wanted to succeed in entering here. Okay, I will see whether any one of them will enter it. To this day, none of them entered it. And very sorry, there are the Jobawa and some of them here. To this day, none of them entered it. They only accepted to hold positions of Madaki, Makama, Serkimba, this and that. But this did not resolve the crisis. They accepted the order of Sokoto, but then they refused to make 100% allegiance to the Serki because of idealism. Their conception of power was that it has to be a corporate thing. There will be, it's not a matter of it's not even a matter of a primary impact inter-party. It was a matter of we have to do it together. Anybody could be Sarki. This was not accepted. That's why Suleiman did not get it very well because of that crisis until he died. Who succeeded him? The one that succeeded him was Ibrahim Dabo, a very charismatic leader. When he came, he said, no, this thing I will not accept. I was appointed the Sarki by Muhammad Bello, the Sultan of Sokoto, and I will act as Sarki, and whoever accepts to go with me, welcome. Otherwise, I will fight him. That's why throughout the most part of his reign, he was in war. That's why his epitaph was Dabo Chigari. Because then Kano was in parts, but then he brought them together and made Kano one single territory under a single ruler, submissive only to the Sultan. That was another crisis. That the charisma of Dabo was what saved the situation. Now, in this era, another problem set in. The Fulani developed a tradition different from the Hausa rulers of succession. Dabo realized the problem posed to Suleiman, so he sought the approval of Sokoto that in order to save the situation in Kano, let each of these leaders of the clans control the house he was staying as the leader of that. So when the jihad was conducted, the Yolawa occupied the house of Madaki. Let him continue as Madaki. Those that occupy the office of Makama, let them continue as the holders of the office of Makama. And for Dabo was Basulidi, but now there are another Sulubawa under Jamo. Let them be hold the office of the Sarkin Dawaki Metuta. Let the Dambazawa hold the position of the Sarkin Bay. And for me as Dabo and the leader of my house, then let Sokoto accept that only from my descendants will the emir of Kano emerge. This Sokoto accepted. This was the gentleman agreement and an undocumented constitution which Kano operated that guided the appointment of Sarki Usman after the death of Sarki Dabo in 1846. But when in 1855 Usman died, there was an attempt, you see again, external force. This time not from without, but from Sokoto itself, wanted to change that tradition. And this led to an attempt at a rebellion, which the Wazir, when he came to inform the Kano rulers of the new king, he saw that Sarki Abdullah Majekun was ready to go to war if he was not declared as the next successor. Waziri noticed the furiousness of the situation. Then he said, no, we have just come to confirm that you are the one that the Sultan recommended to be appointed. This perhaps, was it an intrigue from within the palace, from within the aristocracy, that sent an information to Sokoto, and the Sultan of Sokoto then accepted, and he sent Waziri to enforce it, but he finds that it was not possible, then he reverted to the earlier decision of Abdullah Majid being appointed. That was only what abated another civil war. But if it abated another civil war, it has also its punishment. Because Abdullah was punished by the Sultan in Katsina when he was invited, and for 2 days the Sultan could not see. The Sultan was in Katsina for a function and invited Dabo there. For 2 days, a very prominent, powerful, and one of the dominant emirs in the Sokoto Caliphate, you will be asked to stay outside Katsina for 2 days without permission to see the result was really an abuse and very abusive. Yet Dabo accepted that. Major accepted that. And there was a reconciliation. This is another thing. Was it a Katsina factor? Was it Sokoto factor in this? Or was it within Kano, the treachery in the palace came up with this thing? In 1892-93, there was another crisis of another dimension. This also introduced directly another powerful element. That was the issue of the Kano merchants, mostly Arabs, from the Kulmi side into the lands like of the politics in the church, in the palace. Because one of the principles, many people are saying it was because the children of Abdullah Magical being many number were removed from position, where this. But the fundamental thing was the Arabs that were making money realized that the policies of Muhammad Bello were anti-trade. And they could not accept that. They had to support a rebellion, and they found one in Ex-Galadima, Yusuf. They supported him. In fact, these Arabs were powerful because they were those that were bringing arms and ammunition to Kano in time of need. They participated in the wars and everything. So this was what made even the rebellion to succeed, because without this, they will not succeed. And this is what led to the civil war. I'm coming, I'm finishing. I'm finishing. Okay. Mr. Chairman, sir, please, I want you to give me, they said it's 20 minutes left. I want you to make it 30 minutes. Do you know why? Do you know why, sir? Do you know why, sir? Because the crucial point of the lecture is coming now. What we are doing now, sir. Okay, thank you, sir. What we are doing now. What we are doing now, Mr. Chairman, we are only given an introduction, the premise of understanding the crisis that generated, at least from colonial period. But because of the pressure, let me move. Okay, Abakinaku. I need to talk. So that's all these things that was happening, all that were happening, were in the colonial period, when the people shared almost everything similar. Their language was the same, only the dialects, the economy, the focus, the ideology was Islam. At the beginning of the 20th century, something new cropped in. A non-Muslim civilization conquered Kano, having a different worldview, different ideology. What will happen for a Christian-oriented civilization and economy to conquer a Muslim society with Islam at its focus and ideology? The Islam and Christianity were traditional rivals. Right from the period of the Prophet, they were traditional rivals. And to this day, they remain as one. So if anybody is trying to say that there will be a time when a Christian society will accept a Muslim, he is dead dreaming. He is dead dreaming. Even in Islam, they said, They will never accept you, Ya Muhammad, except you will follow them or accept their religion. That's the only ones they will accept. Even then, they will not accept you. They may think that you are a hypocrite. Now, sir, Mr. Chairman, sir, this European intrusion created another dimension to the Emirate crisis. The British wanted to retain the Emirs in order to succeed in ruling. That's why they established indirect rule. That's why they established indirect rule. Not because they wanted the Emirs. They wanted to use the Emirs to avert crisis, religious crisis. And that's why they established the indirect rule, so far as to make the Emirs even more powerful than they were during the pre-colonial period, during the jihad period. They made the Emirs more powerful than in the caliphate period, in order to make the people really accept to pay taxes. Because taxes was monetized and everybody had to pay. And in the bid to pay taxes in currency, that's what led to the breakdown of the Hausa society, the breakdown of the communal values, the breakdown of the production of food crops that we used to be subsistent to producing export crops that started to make us deficient in the food to eat, but only to produce those materials in order to sell and pay our taxes. In the economy, that's where the Europeans wanted to see the Emirs were supported. Once they succeeded in doing that, then they finished with the support of the Emirs. Now they wanted to see that the Emirs did not act in ways as to retain or revive the values of the Sokoto Caliphate. This they did through tampering with the Sharia injunctions, introducing the Native Court Ordinance of 1933 that wanted to unify the legal system. This generated a unified protest by the Emirs, rejecting it completely. As if things were accepted, but in 1940, something devastating also happened. There was the case of Sofo Guba versus Gondu Native Authority. Sofo Guba was a person that was found having stabbed somebody to death. And he was taken to court, Gondu Native Authority court, where the emir in homicide case is a court of the emir that will hear it. The litigation came before the court, and Sofo Guba was found according to Islamic injunctions. He was found guilty and sentenced to death. But then, here again, something cropped up. Sofo was now encouraged to appeal. Sofo was not educated. He did not go through Western education. How did he know there was something, the channel of appeal? How did the issue of appeal come up? But just Sofo was found to have appealed to where? To West African Court of Appeal in Ghana. In Ghana. You think Sofo could do that? You think Sofo could do that? If it were in Kano, you can say, yes, the merchants in Kano having been, but it was in Gondu. The case came up, and the element of provocation was found. And it was, the court passed judgment that Sofo, yes, committed an offense, but according to common law, not punishable with death. He was sentenced to some years. This generated crisis. The emirs protested. In a conference, they even wrote that you either, telling the colonial authority, you either restore back to our Sharia right to adjudge in accordance with Islam, or take all these things away from us. Don't attach anything to us. That was in 1948. And the amends that the colonial authority was, okay, we will do something, we'll create a Muslim court of appeal. instead of cases to go to West African Court of Appeal, where English common law was the procedure, let Muslim Court of Appeal be provided in 1951. What? The Emirs refused to accept. Why? Because they said, should you appoint a Muslim Court of Appeal? Who would preside over it? An Emir? A Sultan? If not the Sultan, no Emir would accept to have one of his subjects as the person that will take a case from his court to that court. That created the problem again. I'm coming, I will link it up. This is the genesis of the crisis that involved Sarki Sanusi. Many people are thinking that it was the Market report. Market report was used as a camouflage, was used just an instrument to try to establish case against Sarki Sanusi. But the actual issue of Sarki Sanusi was he championed the restoration of the Sharia after the introduction of the penal code. And Sardauna, being the closest person amongst all emirs to Sarki Sanusi, confided in Sarki Sanusi that we only accepted this because it was a pressure. We will never get independence until we make amends in our legal system. That's why we accepted the introduction of penal code. But I assure you, Sarki Sanusi, Sardauna was telling him, once we get independence, we're in control. In the next constitutional amendment, we will champion the restoration of the Sharia. Sarki Sanusi accepted that. He even confided in many of the leading ulama here in Khan that just take heart. We are coming to the day. The D-Day is coming. What happened? 1 year, 1960, nothing happened. Second year, 1961, nothing happened. In the third year, and there will be the constitutional amendment in 1960 to make Nigeria a republican state, to introduce a republican constitution. That's when the amendment will be done. Sarki Sanusi asked Sardauna what was happening. Sardauna realized that he had to, he shouldn't be found reneging on his promise to Sarki Sanusi. So he said he must be something that will be restoration of the Sharia. It was government. But then Sarki Sanusi, Sardauna thought about it and said, let us do something to Sanusi before the constitutional meeting. That's why Sarki Sanusi was found having to be found guilty or having to be found wanting in the expenditure of the native authority. That was the name. And thus appoint the market committee. Let him come and examine the finances. What was the issue? The issue was Sarki Sanusi or the Kano native authority could not pay the month of October salary 1962 to its workers. And it needed a loan from the regional government to pay the salary, and later on she will pay back the loan. And that's why Market was appointed. Come and examine, why was Kano unable to pay that salary? And in the event that it was given that loan, how would she pay back the loan? That was the only thing that were asked the Commission of Inquiry to do. But Moffat, who was a senior administrative officer, British officer, in the office of the Premier, was appointed to head the investigation. And it was the British that instigated the change in the reform of the Sharia, in the introduction of the penal code. And they knew that under the pressure of Sardauna, under the pressure of Sarki Sanusi, Sardauna will not be able to do anything until he makes sure that there was the solution of the Sharia, which they knew Sardauna could not make that. He will not be supported internationally. He will not be supported nationally, he will not even be supported regionally, because some emirs even here were at loggerhead with emirs. The only thing is, before that meeting of the consideration of the Republican Constitution, why couldn't you remove Sunusi? So this issue, just attention will be turned to something else. People's attention will be diverted from the issue of the Sharia, restoration of the Sharia, in the amendment to be made, now to the issue of what will happen to Sunusi, what's the crisis, and that's exactly what happened. That's why even those issues that the commission did not ask, the guidelines of the commission did not give it any authority to engage into those findings, market engage into it. Only in order to find Sunusi at fault, so that he will be asked to either resign or be removed. By the time he was removed, Sagano had no problem. So he went to the Constitution Amendment meeting, and the issue of Sharia was rejected. Nobody then could speak for the emirs. Nobody could speak. It were emirs that were speaking for the Sharia at that time. From 1903 to 1959, it was the emirs that stood against any dangerous amendment to the Sharia to make it secular compliant. They rejected it. It was because they realized that once the emirs were powerful, especially that of Kanu, nothing would happen to the Sharia. That's why they said, okay, we thought the support of Al-Qadi, we could not succeed. We thought the support of the ulama, we could not. Now the emirs were stumbling block. Why can't you approach the issue of the Sharia beyond the reach of the emirs? That's why they politicize the issue of the Sharia and make it a constitutional matter. Emirs were not in the constitution, were not in the membership of the assembly. Only House of Chiefs, which was only advisory. That's why in the 1958 constitution, Sharia was made a constitutional issue, which means nobody could either restore the Sharia, reform it, or reject it, except the constitution, except a constitutional amendment. That's what informed the 1977 Sharia debate. That's what informed the 1988 Sharia debate. That's what informed even the 2014 Babangida Obasanjo 2005 Sharia debate. That's what informed even the 2014 Jonathan-led constitutional club. That is what he did. You couldn't hear. If you hear the voice of the emir, is when he happened to be appointed as a member there. Otherwise, he wouldn't. By constitutional provision, right from 1975, Sharia became a constitutional matter beyond the reach of the emirs. And it was this issue that made the abdication of Sarkis, the crisis that led to the abdication. So it was not a local matter. It was a regional and national matter involving the survival of Nigeria, because the other side of Nigeria will never accept a situation whereby the restoration of the Sharia will be applicable in Nigeria. That's the premise of seeing that. And what is the implication? The implication of the application of Sunusi vulgarized and radicalized country. You find rivals between one another. Aminu Kano and some members of the aristocracy, now they are coming to close run. Immediately Sunusi resigned, some people here in Kano of the NEPO, of MPC, and from the ulama class came together to form the Kano People's Party. Went into merger with the NEPO And in 1965, they championed the cause of the creation of new Kano state out of northern Nigeria. They said Sardauna was not fit to rule. Kano will decide it upon itself. Let Kano be a new state. This is the implication. Have they succeeded? Then the end of those values that binded the Sokoto culture, that is the Emirs, would be past coming. Fortunately, they found a cool-headed person in Sunusi. He refused to side with even Kano People's Party and accepted to resign and accepted to go to Azari. And what happened? Then this was left for the coming of the next emir, who, once they are looking for that next emir, they are looking for who? A very weak person. Looking for a very weak person. They found one in Muhammad Inwa. Very old, and they knew he was peace-loving, very highly religious, just like what they did in 1919 upon the days of Abbas. They wanted to find a very easygoing emir that they could deal with and introduce policies that will do away with the powers of the emir. That's why they found one in Usarki Usman. The Kano people wanted a Bayaru, but even the resident was telling the Waziri, you think Abdullah Bayero, he is very, very intransigent. He is very arrogant. We could not get along with him. And he was too radically a Muslim. So we will come into conflict. Plus other factors, Waziri accepted, recommended, as the head of the college, recommended Usman II to be appointed. Even Usman, as old as he was, about 70, 76, at the time he was appointed, very fragile, always sick. But whenever it came to the issue of Islam, he was at alert. Whenever it came with the colonial advice, what to do with the Muslim or the Emir, he was in bed, sick, indisposed. In fact, in that very year, he died. He learned that the British planned a strategy in which to do away with the powers of the emir. That all the emirs, the principal royal bodyguards of the emir, the office will be cancelled, will be abrogated. And for the retinue of Dogarai, they will be dismissed. And the 3 councillors that were running Kano City will be asked to bring messengers, 100 each, 100, 70, and 50. Madaki 100, I think Makama 70, I think Sarkin Bay 50. So those will be the messengers of the palace to replace the Dogare. He was in bed when he had that. He just directed that his car should be made ready. He wanted to go to see the resident. He was taken to the resident. How did he come? He said, I learned that you introduced some changes and that the council have already approved it. I don't approve it. But then we don't want slavery. These were also, he said, is this the issue of slavery? I have made them free. They are free now. But let me retain them. That was what made that plan to become a fiasco. But what happened when Bayero was to become the emir? They knew in 1919 to oppose him because they knew that he was a staunch, ardently Muslim that wanted to follow the footsteps of his parents. They said, okay, Bayero will allow you to be the emir, but you have to sign an undertaking. You will not do this, you will not do that, you will not do that. Says all sorts of conditions. He said, I accept it. But upon coming, somebody with almost 500 years of experience of the Muslim diplomacy, from Al-Magili to the Jihad period. Once he becomes an emir, he said, okay, yes, we'll not do this anything Western. But you see, one of the things is our ulama. Let us now modernize our ulama. That's why he spearheaded the establishment of the judicial school in 1928. That's why he worked for the introduction of the your school, sir. School for Arabic, law school. Professor IK. Your school, sir. Law school. And even the work of Professor Mansur has said it. When they found out what those products of judicial law school were doing, they said, well, you see, we were thinking that this law school, this graduate will become people that will admire the colonial laws and enforce them. But they appear to be even more recalcitrant than the traditional scholars. And it was this that News also wanted to continue with. So please, in the case of post-colonial period, or even post-independent period, the removal of the Sarkis was beyond only the intellectual of the palace, beyond the common public opinion of the Kanawa, but transcends into regional, national, and even international issues. Because even the Western world will not have, it was the Western world, it was Britain that spearheaded the introduction of penal code. It was in London, when that constitutional conference was being held, that Sardauna was asked, you see, nobody would accept to give independence to a country where a section of it has laws that are suspect. If you want us to grant Nigeria independence, you must accept an amendment in your Sharia corpus so that it will tally with the international values acceptable to Western civilization. That was the condition why even independence was given in 1960, because Sardauna made a compromise. He sacrificed the Sharia for the independence. But another person that faced similar serious problem. Now I'm coming to the end of my case now. It's Emir Ado Bayero that lasted for 51 years. Emir Ado Bayero was one of the most unfortunate, he was the most unfortunate emirs among all the emirs of Kano. He came at a crossroad. He came at the dying end of the powers of the emirs. Even if he enjoyed full power, it was not even full because he was under the provincial commissioner. And it lasted for only 5 years, even 4, when there was the military came. He was unlucky because during his time, regional government was gone. So even the autonomy or some relative powers that emirs were having was removed. It was removed in what? In the removal of the control of native courts from the native authorities in 1968. In the removal of the control of native prison from native authorities in 1968. In the reform that took the native prison from the native authority and amalgamated into the Nigeria prison services. So all powers of the emir were removed, and Ado Bayero had to shoulder that agony. It was during his time that, in fact, the entire control of local governments were removed from emirs in 1976 local government form. When emirs became mayor, just ceremonial heads. Like Aminu Kano, where he was saying that one day you will see an emir in the market, say, it came to that stage. The chairman could agree with me. By 1970, when the DOs were DOs, if not for the cultural values, if not for respect and what, it was the emir of Kano that would go to the district officer when the father of the chairman was the Kano district officer. You see? So in 1976, even the limited control over local government was removed. In 1979, it went even more serious. The role of Emirs, traditional institution, was removed from the constitution. They are no longer recognized anything relevant, save fathers of their people. Yes, father of your father. But even being a father, there are certain rights that are required, but they don't have that right. Then another thing that made Adubayo to suffer, in his period of 51 years, he lived with different military administrations and with as many as 16 or 17 governors. And each had his own style of leadership. And Adubayo had to devise ways or means of surviving him. To survive an emirate for 51 years in a turbulent water like that of Kano is really a very difficult task that only people like Adubayo could do it. No sooner was state created, then another first stumbling block. The people in Kano were used to knowing only one single leadership, that of an emir. The emir had no another superior. Even the sultan was not superior to the emir, except when it came to the issue of appointment or of appeal. But with regards to everything, the sultan would refer a matter back to the emir to look into it again. A complaint was laid to me about this. Please, emir, look into it again and point another person to look into this. But he never interfered to direct. Because at one time during the pre-colonial period, there was that attempt which led to the civil war in Kano. In Zaria, there was that attempt which was also about to lead to a civil war in the appointment of emirs. That's why even Sokoto realized that don't interfere too much. That relationship of autonomy, give it to the emirs. But now in 1967 dispensation, a military governor was appointed with executive power. The emir willy-nilly was under the military. For the public, willy-nilly, they respect the emir more than the governor. And Adubayo and Audubako were about to be put in collision. Were about to be made enemies of one another. If not for the maturity of Audubako and the diplomacy of Adubayo, there might be a civil war in that case. What happened? Then there was democratic dispensation under Rimi. Rimi was from the People's Redemption Party, a party that had its root in the Northern Element Progressive Union. And let me tell you also, to simplify what our discussion will say. You see, another strategy which the Europeans used, they realized that Emir had full control over the subjects. Let them create a rift between the emirs and their talakawa and their subjects. And they found that in the collection of taxes. For you to pay tax, you must, otherwise you'll be imprisoned. Many people do not have the means to pay tax. And it's the native authorities that collected tax. So whoever was the dagachi, or the meungwa, or the hakim, that was the person who collected the tax. So if you could not collect the tax, it was the dagachi that would direct for the rights of that person. During that time, to know the extent of this is you cannot, during the time of collection of tax, which was between December and November, December, January, wherever you go, you have to go with your tax receipt. You are passing by, a dogari or a police will stop you. Where is your tax receipt? Nowhere to be found. Go to prison. It's prison directly. Don't think that you can escape it. That's why during that time, even to travel to other areas was difficult. So this made the Talakawa to see the Emirs as their enemies. When it came to political dispensation, Kano was a land, was a territory where we have so many rich population, and the gap between the haves and the have-not was big, so that you can see the disparity clearly. So the political class allied themselves with the Talakawa and telling the Talakawa to know that the emirs were collaborators with the colonial authorities. That's why they were being oppressed. What happened when it came to the formation of political parties? You find that the Talakawa sided with the party of the oppressed led by Nemi. Whereas the establishment, realizing that once Nebu succeeded in getting over power, then that will be the end of the emirs. The colonial establishment advised the emirs. You see, Nebu was formed as a political party in 1950, August 1950. Don't allow them to contest the election in northern Nigeria alone. They will sweep the seats. Once they do, they will go to and they will undo you in the assembly. Don't allow them to form another rival party. That was why the MPC was formed in 1951. NEPO in 1950, MPC in 1951. And because of the influence of the emirs, MPC was made willy-nilly to win the election in order to perpetuate the status quo. This problem continues. That's why in 1979 it was this establishment party, the MPN, and the anti-establishment party, the PIP. The PIP, the anti-establishment party, was the one that won the election. One of the first victims was the Native Authority establishment. Even though there was no longer a Native Authority, but thank you, sir. And again, wallahi kaga duk kawar ga samun mata. So one of the things was now really found a way to exert their pound of flesh from their former oppressors. But again, I want you to mark this, perhaps, I don't know, in the discussion. Rini was PRP. Ado Bayero was not the NPN, was only the emir of Kano. So when the election was won, Rini invited Ado Bayero for a discussion, and they chose a neutral place. Not neutral per se, but they chose to meet secretly at the Nasarawa Palace of the emir, Nasarawa Palace. They met. Even before Rimi was sworn in, they met. Rimi said that forget about all that happened during the electioneering campaign. It was all politics. Now we realize that we cannot rule without the support of the emirs. And the emirs cannot function without the support of the government. So we need to work hand in hand. And they reached an agreement that they would work together amicably. Please, I want you to take note of that. The moment each went away, Emir going back to his palace, Rimi going back to government house, or to his own residence, because he was yet to his own. No sooner was the following day, then there were insinuations over going about in the town, that Rimi has called Ado Bayero to apologize for what he did. Do you think Ado Bayero will send this information? Do you think Rimi will send this information? Somebody somewhere in the palace was hurting his own children. And the next day, Rimi heard of this. He said, is this what the second can do? Okay. 1, this is 1-0, there will be 1-1. That was when, once he found an opportunity, that was the first thing they did, was to abolish Haraji and Jangal, thinking that they had hit the economic base of the native authority. Unfortunately, they didn't know that they have destroyed the society generally. They thought that we are providing freedom to the people. You know that we are all supporting them, but now we are crying. We are supporting them, yes. Jungle and Haraji, go sign up operation. Do you think there will ever be a population that will survive without paying tax? A society that will function without paying something to the state? Even Islam says you have to pay zakat. But we have gone in a situation whereby nobody was paying anything. Before, that's why restriction into establishing permanent settlement in Kano was difficult. You have to show your tax receipt, you have to show those who are, so many conditions. But once Haraji and Jangali was cancelled, everybody started trooping to Kano, buying a farmland, building, everywhere houses started sprang up without order, without control. Coming to the issue now, the issue of security is becoming difficult today. The seed was sown in 1979. This cancellation of tax. And this treachery meted against both Ado Bayero and Sim followed him, so that when there was resistance, there was a query sent to the Serki, which led to another crisis. For the startled public, a Serki being sent a warning? We have never had a Serki, the representative of God on earth. Who is the governor? Up to that time, some people were seeing the status of Serki more than that of the governor. This created problem. And this was about also to lead into a civil war. But you think even that crisis will be hatched by the Emir's palace? By the Emir? No. Certainly there are other interests that wanted to perpetuate these differences, so that it is through those differences that they could get what they wanted. Similar thing happened in 1984 for the visit. Similar thing happened also. Even during the military era. Abacha and Ado Bayero were also about to be put at loggerheads. As I told you, Ado Bayero was a shrewd diplomat. He realized that whatever a leader did to you, please, if it is monetary, don't spend it. Take your time. Something, a flesh of on meat will be demanded out of you. If you could not deliver, then you will be blackmailed. This I asked the emir, he said it happened. I asked the emir of Kano, one-on-one, he said, yes, it happened. The time when Abacha wanted to succeed himself, and he wanted the support of Emir Ado. He wanted Emir Ado to support him. Emir Ado refused. That is one thing. If you want to be an emir, then you have to have an integrity. Don't allow anybody to determine what you do. You are his father. So do not come bring your level down, no matter your desperate position. MD was part of the team. The chairman of the local organizing committee was part of the team of about 5 of us that were in Kaduna. Sometimes in 1996, we met with General Ibrahim Babangida just 3 years after he left office. We spent about 7 hours with him. Here he is. Part of the question we asked him is, among all the emirs in northern Nigeria, among all the leaders in northern Nigeria, whom do you respect most? He said, well, with regards to traditional leadership, I only respected Emir Ado Bayero. And we asked, why? He said throughout my stay as the president, he never asked me for a single favor. I will not tell you the rest of the two because it's not their issue. But for Emir, he said it. And later, when I met him again, he confirmed to me, we were with Bashir Tofa and we visited this Babangida in Mina. And I was asking him that Bashir Tofa told me something, sir, is it true? He said, yes. He said, what is it? What is it? I said, the issue of the Emir of Kano, when he came from London, he could not get a flight to Kano on time. He said, yeah, it happened. It was Bashir Tofa that broke down the news to me that Emir was in Lagos for 2 days, he could not get a flight to Kano. So I said, and he could not talk to me? Bashir Tofa told him that he will never contact you, Mr. President. He is an Emir. You are just an ordinary soldier. Babangida wanted to say, he said, okay, let me try it. He dialed his phone. He got to the Emirs. Emir picked it. Mai girma shugaban kasa, ina lafiya. Mr. Emir, I learned you and Lagos. Yeah, muna nan ne. Please, I will speak in Hausa. To Abuja, he wanted to have an audience with him. The Emir sent back that he was not coming. The Emir of Kano sent back za a gaya shugaban kasa, ina cikin uzuri, ba zan iya zuwa. But Obasanjo sent back again with a flight, presidential flight, that no matter what, here is the president, please, I want to see you. He sent back the flight, the presidential plane, that I will not come. Curiously, Obasanjo phoned Ibrahim Shekaru. Governor Ibrahim Shekaru was telling me this. He phoned him. Governor Shekarau, me shugaban kasa yake nufi ne. You know he could speak Hausa. Me sarki yake nufi. I sent for him. He refused to come. I sent a flight. He refused to follow the flight. Please do something. But Shekarau also impressed me. He said, ranka daɗe, ba wannan dangantaka ce tsakanina da sarki ba. Sarki mu a nan uba ne. We cannot confront him with this. This is a political matter. Talk to him directly. That was the end of the matter. I learned, well, I'm stopping at 2014, but I learned recently somewhere at some state, just a governor sent a query to a Selki because he said he was not coming. Ado Bayo refused to answer the sermon of President because he knew that issue was the interest of the people of Kano, was political, and he was not ready to be in politics. Throughout the electioneering period, whenever there was a time of voting came, people had been voting the ballot paper of Emir to see whether he had any inclination towards any political party. When the ballot was cast, and later they realized that the Emir Ado Bayo's ballot was never stamped in the favor of any political party between 1979 up to the time of his death. Maintaining his neutrality, being a father. When Abacha sent a check of 2 million naira to the Selki at one time, it was a trap. He wanted to use Ado Bayero. Then later he could not use him. After almost 2 or 3 years, he turned back. He said, we have sent a check to the native authority account, to the local government, and to the Emirate Council account. And we checked that it was not credited. So we wanted to find what is the source of the, why is that money? The moment the information reached Selki, and the Selki directed one of his courtiers looking after his own residence. He said, je ka duba alkuki na wajen shiga ɗaki na za ka ga wata ambulan ka ɗauko. He went and picked the envelope. There was a check written 3 years ago of 2 million naira. He said, take it back to you. When Abacha saw it, he said, this man. They wanted to have a case against him so that they could move him. And even members of the aristocracy then were also up to the task of defending the integrity of the palace. When at various occasions, the seat or the throne of Ado Bayero was at least Limi, during Hamza Abdullahi, even during Abacha, there were insinuations that some princes, especially Tijan Hashim, were asked that we were trying to remove the Emir of Kano in Istolu. He said, yes, I want to be in that house. I want also to be the Emir of Kano, but not at the expense of removal of my brothers. Who will do that now? The era was when these emirs, these court officials, these emirate officials were concerned with the integrity of the palace, and they wanted to defend it anyhow and wherever possible. If the current, up to 2014 when Emir died, if his successors were ready to follow the footsteps of Ado Bayero, I know nobody would dare have the chance of saying a word to any of the succeeding emirs. This is it. With regard to the other emirates, I will only say something for 2 minutes. You see, the issue of emirates, when we say emirate, we are talking about, I will not, up to 2014, I will not talk of emirates. I will talk of the principal towns of Rano, Sarki Rano, traditional Sarki Rano, Sarkin Gaya, Sarkin Karaye, and Sarkin Dutse Tina riga an yi sarki da. You see, the relationship between Kano and these principal towns was brought about by security considerations, especially Karai. The devastation of Katsina against Kano was just too much in that 100 years of the 16th century. At any time Kano was in war with Katsina, it was defeated. And Karai was the principal town, if under the control of Katsina, then the entire western and northern Kano will be destroyed. In part, because of the attack of Katsina, Kano had been experiencing famines during that period. So that's why, because of the power of the Kano army and what have you, they entered into agreement with Karai as far back as 15th century. Some even mentioned as 11th century during Yusa's era, that Kano would protect Karai. And that was, Karai will retain her autonomy of throwing her own house of leadership, but in terms of military protection, Kano would provide that. So Kano would be under Karai. Similar arrangement was made with Rano after the defeat of Santoli. Similar arrangement was made with Dutse when Kano was trying to protect that area from the Sokoto attack, from the Borno attack. This was a gentleman agreement that went throughout the centuries, with Kano being the overlord, not necessarily in all aspects, only in military and security aspects. But there were challenges to that agreement, especially in the 18th century, during the period of Da'i, when Sarkin Gaya, they called him Paringizo ne ko Parin Menene, attempted to do away with that relationship with Kano. and Sarkin Kano that he summoned him. Upon answering the summon coming to Kano, he executed him. And do you know what? That Sarkin Gaya was an in-law to Sarki Dadi, because his daughter Maryam was marrying Sarki Dadi, and the heir apparent to the throne was her son. But in the interest of the state, Sarki Dadi executed him. To show you that there are challenges to this leadership. And this was brought to test also during the period of Rimi, when he attempted to see that he gave them a sort of permanent autonomy. The mistake he made was he said he would put them at the same rate, same status with the Emir of Kano. That's what made the Kano public, the aristocracy, and even a section of individuals at the federal level to oppose it. Sir, I will not, thank you very much, you have done a lot to me. I want to conclude now. In conclusion, I want to state that Emirate crisis in Kano is a result of collaboration between interest groups within the palace to control the monarchy, the leader, the Sarki. Where they fail, then they will institute a rebellion or a civil war. The duty of the public, not to fight, but public opinion is important, is always to support the Sarki to the detriment of any other group within the aristocracy. Your target is the person of the Sarki because he symbolizes the integrity of the state. Where you take sides, then you are becoming an accomplice. And instead of solving the problem, you will create another problem. I'm not for any traditional brotherhood, but in the event of the Izala fighting traditional brotherhood, it has now become another brotherhood. Does that solve the problem? Thank you very much.
Yes.